It didn't have to be that way. Leaders on both sides miscalculated. Maybe it was inevitable. Perhaps the two cultures could never have lived together as equals. The Modocs were a tribe of individuals, strong-willed, outspoken, feared by their neighbors. The land was bountiful. It fed them and sheltered them. It provided all that was needed. They lived in a world governed by tradition and magic. The coming of the white man changed all that. Thousands of settlers passed through the Modoc lands. They killed the game and muddied the streams. They introduced the horse and the gun and claimed ownership of the land. They brought whiskey and smallpox and Christianity. Unhappy with conditions on the reservation, the Modocs returned to their village located near the California-Oregon border, on land now owned by the settlers. The chief of this band was an eloquent and intelligent young man, dubbed Captain Jack by the white man. He lived with his two wives, a sister, and a young daughter in a community of 150. The Modocs had decided to live as free men in their own country. Like many of the young men of the tribe, Captain Jack frequented the towns, often trading with the miners and settlers. There was a great demand for the services of the Modoc women. The powerful medicine man, curly-headed doctor, viewed the white culture as a threat to the tribe and his own authority. He called for a return to the traditional ways. Dancing the ghost dance, he told his people that warriors from generations past would rise from the grave to fight. He demanded confrontation with the white man. The Modocs became increasingly belligerent towards the settlers. They demanded payment for the use of their land. An uneasy peace lasted several years. Responding to the demands of the frightened settlers, the troops attempted to force the Modocs to return to the reservation. They were reinforced by local volunteers. The Modocs were taken by surprise. They began to surrender. Suddenly, shots were fired. A short and bloody battle was fought. The war had begun. The medicine man and his followers were outraged by the surprise attack. They swept across the countryside, slaughtering 14 settlers. No one had been warned of the army's actions. The Modocs were indicted for murder in Oregon. Public sentiment demanded war. The rest of the tribe, led by Captain Jack, took refuge in the Modoc fortress, an impenetrable labyrinth of volcanic rock, used by the Modocs for generations. A network of trails and natural trenches provided a completely secure link between the firing positions. Fortifications ensured protection for the warriors. From their vantage points, the Modocs could see for miles. They watched and waited for the inevitable attack. A bitter dispute took place within the tribe. Captain Jack knew it was folly to fight the soldiers. He wanted to negotiate for peace. Curly-headed Doctor and his followers were now wanted for murder and felt they had no choice but to fight. The medicine man promised magic that would turn aside the white man's bullets and ensure victory. To fight or not, a vote was taken. 14 for Captain Jack and peace. 37 for the Doctor and war. The troops were confident. 50 savages were no match for trained soldiers. Volunteers from California and Oregon joined the fight. Indian scouts were hired. For the first time, war correspondents covered an Indian war. The army of 400 attacked at dawn through a thick fog. 50 Modoc warriors waited, hidden in the rocks and crevices. The advance was stopped with gunfire that seemed to come from every direction. The soldiers never saw an Indian the entire day. By nightfall, it was over. The troops were completely routed. The whole nation now knew of the Modoc War. Captain Jack now felt he could negotiate from a position of strength. If the white man wanted peace, he would have to come to him. The war had become a public issue. President Grant, responding to political pressure, formed a peace commission to seek an end to the hostilities. General Canby, the commander of the Pacific region, took charge of the peace effort. In a show of strength, he moved his troops to a camp within view of the Modoc stronghold. He then established contact with Captain Jack. Jack demanded a reservation in the Modoc homeland and amnesty for the murders of the settlers. General Canby and his staff believed too much blood had been spilled for the Modocs to live in peace in the area. He agreed to Jack's demand for amnesty, but offered only a vague promise of fair treatment if the Modocs surrendered. The medicine man and his followers looked on with suspicion. The Army's maneuvers were further proof of their real intentions. They wanted to fight, and they believed they could win again. The troop buildup continued. Warm Springs Indians, ancient enemies of the Modocs, were hired as scouts. 1,000 soldiers now confronted the Modocs. Reports of Indian uprisings disturbed the government leaders. The stalemate had to be broken. Canby renewed his efforts for peace. Another series of conferences reached an impasse. He delivered an ultimatum: surrender or fight. A violent argument raged in the Modoc stronghold. The war party wanted Captain Jack to assassinate Canby and the other peace commissioners at the next conference. Captain Jack refused. Such an act would lead to the extermination of the tribe. It would be a doomed course of action. The lava beds would never be taken, the medicine man promised. His magic would ensure victory. Captain Jack was knocked down. A woman's hat and shawl were thrown over him. He was taunted, called a coward and a squaw. Kill or be killed, he was told. Angry and humiliated, Jack struggled to his feet. I will do it. I will kill Canby, although I know it will cost me my life and the lives of my people. But I will do it. Through the night, they danced. True to his word, Captain Jack carried out the desperate plan to kill General Canby. The Modocs fled to their stronghold. An outraged nation demanded justice. The troops attacked from two sides. 50 Modocs defended. By shuttling their men through the trenches, the Modocs were able to stop advance after advance. The army suffered many casualties. The Modocs only one. With the Indians surrounded, the situation became desperate on the third day. The fighting intensified. The Modocs were low on ammunition and cut off from their water. Pressed on all sides, they had to evacuate if they were to continue to fight. The next day, the soldiers captured an empty fortress. The Modocs were free and a threat to the entire region. They had to be found. A large patrol was sent out to locate the Indians. The Modocs attacked from all sides. The Modocs continued to roam the countryside, attacking supply trains and outposts at will. The soldiers were paralyzed with fear and unable to fight the seemingly invincible Indians. Fresh troops and a new general attempted to turn the tide. Larger patrols were sent out. Another contingent was ambushed. Once again, the soldiers panicked. Captain Jack directed the attack from a nearby ridge. He wore Canby's uniform and brandished the dead general's sword. The soldiers were stunned by the sight. They turned and charged. They routed the surprised Modocs, capturing their ammunition and, more importantly, mortally wounding a close ally of curly-headed Doctor. The Modoc spell was broken. That night, the Modocs burned the body of their fallen warrior. A fierce debate divided the tribe. The medicine man and his followers blamed the death on Captain Jack. They charged him with protecting his friends at the expense of the others. They refused to follow his leadership any longer. The tribe split in two. The Indians were tired and hungry, and now on the defensive. The army picked up the trail of the medicine man and his half of the tribe, pounding them across miles of the barren countryside. Several days later, he surrendered with his people. 4 of the Modoc prisoners were hired by the army to track down their chief. They guided the army to a remote canyon where they found the rest of the tribe weary and beaten. Captain Jack was the last to surrender, bitter and betrayed. The war was over. After a brief trial, Captain Jack and 3 others were hanged as the tribe watched. Those who helped the army were pardoned and sent to a reservation in Oklahoma with the rest of the tribe. The only Indian war fought in California. 50 against 1,000. The Modocs were defeated as much by the divisions within the tribe as by the army they fought. It didn't have to be that way. Or maybe it did.
Hongwe, hongwe, yeah, yeah, oh, yeah, hongwe, hongwe, yeah, oh, yeah,